Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Drag Illustrated's The Racing Business with me, Jason Dukes. As always, we're brought here by Racers Club, super apparel company. Actually, just had the restock and re-release last Friday, so make sure that you go online and get your Racers Club swag. I'd be wearing it right now, but I got to represent for the captain's share coaching, right? But always brought to you here by Drag Illustrated, our executive producer, JT Murder Tundra Hudson. This week's guest, super excited. Like I said, a lot of this show is going to be about exploring the different people and the different businesses in motorsports. And today we have Ron Mowen from Vengeance Racing. And doing, you guys know this show. I try not to do a lot of research before the show because I want a lot of the stuff to come out. I actually want this to be an exploration and an explorative show. I've known of Ron for a long time, and this is going to be my introduction to Ron. So I don't know him, so you guys will all sort of get to see that happen all together. But a couple things that I learned in just researching Ron. One, that there's a thriving, not quarter mile, but actually half mile racing industry that I didn't even know existed. And the other thing about Ron is that just in looking in some of his work, that he does both drag racing, half mile drag racing, and then also road course racing. So I obviously love people who can go over different genres. So we'd love to bring Ron in, and welcome to Drag Illustrated's The Racing Business. How you doing today, Ron?
Hey, I'm great, Jason. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Look, I had a great time just doing the little bit of research that I did about you. It's one of those things. It's racing, right? Like you hear about people, you're in the same circle and you hear about people all the time, but then you actually go to do the research and see what they do, and you end up learning so much. So the way this show happens is we generally start at the now, and then just tell us about all the things you're working on, and then we'll just go back and see how on earth you actually got to this point, and share all the wisdom and knowledge that you have up to this point. So tell us about now, like what is everything that Vengeance Racing has going on. I know there's a couple of events and a bunch of different cars in that beautiful shop you got.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we're busy. As of right now, No Mercy is happening down at SGMP this week. We've got one of our biggest clients, Ned Dunphy, down there with his newly debuted SMX 481 drag week type Viper. He's getting his feet wet in Radio versus the World, hoping to click off some 370s this weekend in his street-driven V8 Viper. We also happen to be the title sponsor for the new class that's down there for the first time ever, Streetcar Bragging Rights. And that's more our forte. We tend to build extremely fast and reliable race cars that are also street driven quite often. Some of them are more street car than race car. And we've got Ryan Weger down there. He's got a 4,000 pound 6-gen Camaro ZL1 twin turbo that we just finished up. Put a 9-inch in it and a turbo 400 in it. And he's going down there looking for some bottom 8-second ETs, hopefully over 170 mile an hour, and see how he does in the class this weekend.
Nice. And so also, can you tell us a little bit about so we talked about the cars. Can you tell us a little bit about the shop that you have there? And then also just the different aspects of social media, just because, that's a huge part of what we do nowadays also.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're located in Cumming, Georgia, just a little bit northeast of Atlanta, just under 13,000 square foot facility. We specialize in late model performance vehicles. We were exclusive to General Motors up until about 5 years ago, and you couldn't ignore some of the Coyote stuff that was coming out, as well as Ned and his Viper. We dabbled in the Viper community. So we have opened our doors to various manufacturers, and our shop is kind of divided into two different departments. We've got a production shop where we specialize in 1,000, 1,100 horse and under street cars, and they're pretty much predefined packages that come and go within a few weeks, and we put them back in the customer's hands. And usually the only time we see them would be for, additional upgrades. And then we also have our race shop, which is more along the lines of they're more focused on race. They they have aftermarket ECUs, custom fabrication, chassis work, things like that. And not only do we build them from scratch, but we also maintain them and support them at events. And both shops are extremely full right now.
Also, and can you talk a little bit about the not necessarily production, but the marketing side of it, or the
Okay.
PR and video
Yeah.
side?
So, I would say the biggest thing we've always focused on is word of mouth, maintaining an impeccable reputation. We have always wanted to exceed our clients' expectations and goals, and give them the best, not only product, but experience possible, which is what a lot of performance shops lack in this industry. Uh, so word of mouth is our number one marketing tool. Outside of that, we absolutely use social media. We do have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and we utilize constant contact newsletters. But we utilize all those avenues to just share what we do in the shop on a daily basis, share our clients' accomplishments. We don't really do any paid advertising. It's just putting it out there, letting people see the quality of the work, the results, and then seeing us in action at events is a great marketing tool as well. Come up and meet us, look at the cars in person, look at the cars perform, talk to our clients, and that's usually all we need.
Right. And so I guess for a lot of people, drag racing gets eighth mile, 1,000-foot, quarter mile, but you guys do a bunch of different types of drag racing and also road racing.
Yeah, so the half mile thing became extremely popular because we have so many cars, and a lot of other shops do, obviously, as well. We have so many clients that enhance the performance of their vehicle, but they're not dedicated track cars. You can't go out to SGMP and find a class at No Mercy or Lights Out that really suits some of the stuff that's out there. And these cars, they make big power from the factory, and then you add 300 or 400 on top of it. They don't want to create a full-blown drag car. So half mile came out. I mean, it's been over a decade ago, but you get to show up on these unprepped runways and stretch your legs for a half a mile. And, you have safety requirements, but you don't have to have the ability to cut like a 1.0 or a 1.1 60-foot to be competitive. And being transparent, you don't have to be the greatest driver. As long as you can keep the car going straight, the mile an hour is usually reflected on, if it's a manual car, you're looking at third and fourth gear acceleration is going to give you a great mile an hour. So even if you spin off the line or bog or just drive part throttle until you get third gear and roll into it, you're highly competitive running it out the back. So for the average guy, the guy that just wants to have fun with his car and stretch his legs without going to prison, it was a great opportunity. And, they looked like heroes a little bit. They didn't have to go out there and know how to stage a car and bump in and cut a light and all that. And they could still outrun their buddies. So it was a different kind of fun, but it's a heck of a lot of fun at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and because this is a business podcast, I think people need to remember that this whole thing is supposed to be fun. And if it's fun for people, like, they'll continue to do it. I think a lot of times in racing as fans, we get wrapped up in the, like you said, who could stage the best, who could have the best 60-foot, who could do all those things.
Yep.
But for a lot of people, it's just about going out and having fun.
Well, and that's the thing, that type of racing is usually more frustrating than fun unless you're in the winner's circle, and you rely on a lot of conditions, outside conditions like track prep, things like that. You experience a lot more failures in parts. And this absolutely gave people an avenue to just have more fun with their cars in a more relaxed, less competitive environment. It was more of, ribbing one another and a little bit of shit talking back and forth versus the racing, actual drag racing, where it's a lot more competitive and, shut your hood when somebody walks by and things like that. It's a different environment, which did make it fun and absolutely leads to more business. Hey, how do we go faster? I had a great weekend. This is, I enjoy this. So,
Right. And what about the road racing?
Road racing, we're not as involved in. However, being a shop with the reputation that we are and being 45 minutes from Road Atlanta, we certainly have our share of clients who have invested into us and trusted us with their road race vehicles. It's again, we don't get out there as much as we like, but we've built some very serious engines, set up some very nice cars, and we've got some highly competitive people that travel the Southeast and take a lot of championships. But my road race knowledge, I would certainly like for it to be greater. And honestly, it's one of those unexplored passions of mine because I simply haven't had the time yet. But, when you look at any sporting event, drag racing is, depending on what your, distance is, you're 3 to 8 seconds of fun. Half mile racing is 15 to 20 seconds of fun, and road racing can be an entire day of fun,
Right.
So it's definitely something I want to get out there and give a shot at. But yeah, we've been out there quite a bit. We got some great clients that own quite a few track records and run really well.
Yeah. So the purpose of this show is to get behind the scenes of both the people and the businesses that are here. So is it okay if we go ahead and start back to like Kid Ron and see who Kid Ron was and how this developed into what it is?
Yeah, of
I know.
course.
Yeah, but I know for me, a lot of the people that grew up with like Kid Jason probably thought that Jason would turn into a Ron because I was always tearing stuff up and putting it back together and modifying stuff and all that stuff. And then I grew up to be like mechanically useless. How about you as a kid? What was your?
So I got to touch on that real quick. I'm about 90% mechanically useless myself. If
There's
I
hope.
Oh, 100%. If I walk out in my shop and I grab a wrench, we could do it right now. And literally within 10 seconds of me picking up a wrench, there's 5 guys asking me what I need. They don't want me to wrench. So yeah, I'm not mechanically, I'm dangerous, but I'm certainly not a professional. Kid Ron, I grew up extremely poor with an alcoholic father. Moved quite a bit and, kind of had one of those childhoods that you could write a book about if you wanted to. Instead of using it as a victim mentality, I used it as a strengthening tool to not repeat that for my children and become more for my life. And as a teenager, I wound up moving in with my grandmother and kind of experienced what like a normal life was like, if you will. Had stability and whatnot, and I went to the same high school all 4 years versus having gone to 13 other schools in 8 years.
Right.
And I found in high school that I liked the military. I was into ROTC and, wore the pickle suit 3 days a week and really embraced that and decided ultimately when I got out of high school, I was going to go in the military. And my first shot, like I was going in the Marine Corps and, it was all ego for me. I wanted to be a Marine and found out the Army would pay me or give me a pay grade promotion over the Marine Corps based on my education in high school with ROTC. So I took that and ultimately went to airborne school and then went through a program called RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program, which landed me in the 75th Ranger Regiment, a SOCOM unit at, they're in Fort Benning, Washington State, and in Augusta, South Carolina. But I spent 4 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and my plan was to make a career out of it. But when I came up for re-enlistment, the Army was getting somewhat political. Very politically correct. I was in a unit that you kind of had to earn your right to be there and stay there. And you could just see things changing into what we all see today. And I said, I'm not really a politically correct person. I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to find out what's next in life. And got out of the military. The last year I was in, I had applied to Florida State Patrol and U.S. Border Patrol agencies and actually got accepted to both. There again, Florida State Patrol told me to move to Florida, learn Spanish, or move to South Florida and learn Spanish. And I would basically be dealing with refugees and things like that for the first couple of years. And U.S. Border Patrol said, hey, if you take the job, you go into Texas and you'll be on horseback for 2 to 3 years. Well, right at the same time, there was an agent with U.S. Border Patrol on horseback that was shot at by an illegal trying to cross the border. And he returned fire and was actually ultimately relieved of duty indefinitely. And I said at that point, I said, I feel like law enforcement is just a civilian sector of the military at this point, and this isn't going to work for me either. So I decided to explore my passion, which had always been cars and hot rodding. And I found myself working for a company called GMMG in Marietta, Georgia. They built specialty cars for General Motors, and they were sold through dealerships. They utilized as many GM parts as possible. Very exclusive high-end cars. I mean, back then you were talking about a fourth-gen Camaro that would sell upwards of $130,000, $135,000 in 2002, 2005 era. So I worked there for about 6 years and started noticing the company was not moving forward with the times. Wanting to focus on the fourth-gen Camaro platform that had been dead since 2002. And I had also learned that there was a huge need in the aftermarket performance industry for a company that ran their business legitimately and, gave people what they paid for, treated them fairly, stood behind them, and put the right people in play to run a legitimate business. Having been a consumer for so many years at that point, you would go in and go to a shop that on the internet would be famous, and you would get there and the guy working on your car was the owner, the tuner, the parts guy, the customer service guy. And you usually ended up with a very, very lackluster experience. And I just felt like it was my calling to kind of fill that void. And I felt like it was easily done with my level of responsibilities and ethics and the way I wanted to do it. And ultimately left GMMG and opened up Vengeance Racing. And we've been open since 2006. So right at 17 years now. And my focal point from day one is the same focus point today, is to deliver a product and an experience that exceeds our customers' expectations. And man, it's been a fun 17 years.
That's awesome. Thank you. A couple thanks. Thank you for sharing, for being open and sharing the story, especially of the childhood, and also thank you for the service to the
Of course.
country. Yeah. Can we just talk a little bit about the childhood? Not to get into the childhood, but more about just lessons that you learn that help in in the current business, like the way that you described the childhood of like going to 13 different schools, all that. Like as a young kid, there's a lot of meeting people and interacting with people, and this is a people business. Like, what did you learn about either people or yourself at that age that helped today?
The childhood's kind of tough to relate to today, because the things I learned then were how to protect myself, how to shelter myself, and how to survive. I wasn't an open person as a child when it came to meeting people, because I moved so often, and I was, for lack of a better term, pretty much trailer park trash. So, when the broke kid shows up at a new school, you get picked on, and you're only going to be there for 5, 6, 7 months anyway before you move or get evicted or whatnot. So didn't really open up to people. I just did my thing or whatever and tried to protect me. Seeing the transition from that to a normal, stable life kind of opened my eyes more so than most people, I think, ever do, as to how important that is and how good that is in comparison to what a lot of people go through. And it also gave me a very sympathetic heart to the people that never get the opportunity to experience what I did by having my grandmother available to me. So the change really opened my eyes to always trying to understand another person's perspective, trying to lift them up when you can, trying to be able to communicate with them and help them understand the differences in whatever the situation is that they haven't experienced yet. And that, I think, is what's translated to business for me. Is I'm very good at sitting down with anybody and hearing their situation and being able to, even if I don't relate mentally, I'm able to at least see where they're coming from and try to resolve whatever it is that we're working through. You know, if we've had an issue on our end that they're not happy with, or the car's performance, or even as simple as they read on the internet, it should have been better, you know.
Right.
You know, it opens my mind to be able to do that. And I am typically more sympathetic to situations when they arise, knowing I've been there, done that myself. You know, I don't look down upon people, and I don't focus on where they come from, what they look like, or who they are, as much as I do their character and what I can do to help.
Right. How about lessons from the military?
Lessons from the military have probably helped me the most, but also hurt me the most. My attention to detail, my OCD, my level of discipline, my expectation of other people is quite often on a level of excess. You know,
Are you a Capricorn, Leo, or Taurus?
I'm a Leo. You know, and
I'm a Capricorn, and my dad was a Leo, so I get it. We're like,
okay,
yeah,
you get it. So yeah, I mean, I just, you know, I don't do well with excuses. I don't do well with not coming through and delivering on time, you know, and I always set the bar high, you know, and coming from a unit as elite as the 75th Ranger Regiment, that's what is instilled in you. You know, you never quit, you never give up, you never leave a man behind, and you always fight further than anybody around you, and you bring them with you, you know. So, you know, in my eyes, when we have a deadline, not only are we going to meet the deadline, we're going to beat the deadline. And, you know, I personally have a phenomenal team here that absolutely every one of them attribute to our success. But I also have quite a lofty team of former employees that couldn't cut it or couldn't adapt to my mindset. And I've been unwilling to waver from who I am, because I feel like my mindset, my level of attention to detail is kind of what has made this business as successful as it is. You know, making sure that we do the small things, making sure that the wiring under the dash looks like the wiring under the hood, you know, quality and appreciation for what we're doing. And so, yeah, it's been great for me, but it's also somewhat of a burden, you know, having to adjust my expectations or work with people that don't have the same mindset at times. But again, I've finally, after 17 years, I've had some great people along the way, but I haven't really ever lost anybody that I've regretted losing. And the crew that I have they far outperform pretty much anybody in the country I've ever worked with.
Yeah. And I heard you talk about, leaving a couple different things just because it just didn't work for you anymore, or the same with some employees, like it just doesn't work for you anymore. And, I coach entrepreneurs all the time. And one of the biggest roadblocks that is a huge, again, I get that you were telling the story in a quick thing. So I don't know how long it took you to actually do those things, but it's a huge roadblock for a lot of people to just leave things that don't work for them. Like where did that come from for you? Like that, you don't, if something's not working, you're out, or if someone's not working, they're out. Like, is that just something ingrained in you, something you had to practice? Tell us about that.
I think for me, I've always, I went through quite a bit of therapy throughout my life, and my doctors always told me that I've lived a lot of my life in survival mode. That I need to relax more and focus more on the fun and just bring things down a little bit. But as a person, I guess because of where I came from, I've always wanted to achieve my next goal. If I open the business, now I want to grow the business, and then I want to expand the business, and then I want to open more businesses. I'm just never really satisfied with where I'm at. So once I feel like something's no longer a challenge or it's not overwhelming to me, I'm ready for the next task. And then when it comes to employees or people that I surround myself with, I very much want like-minded people and good people, that I firmly believe what they say is true, that you are the five people you spend the most time with in your life. And I've noticed throughout my life when I've made the changes necessary to enhance those five closest people, that my life itself improves along with my mindset. So, I, you know, I'm a very patient person. I try to help people, uh, and I try to reward them and do everything I can to bring them up. But there comes a point where either I realize that they're never going to get where we both want them to be, or they don't want to be there. They just want a job, uh, or they just don't share the same vision I do. Then once we kind of get to a certain point of no return, then we might as well part ways and give somebody else an opportunity there.
Yeah. Um, about half the people that listen to the show are already actively in the racing business, and then probably the other 50%, they're looking at a podcast like this to get advice to get into the racing business. You made a huge transition, or I'll use the word huge, but transition in your life from military law enforcement to finding your passion, and that being motorsports. Like, what advice do you have for people that may also be in that same situation that you were in back in the day of just, look, it's time to go for it. This is my passion. This is what I need to do.
I mean, number one, I tell people all the time, you've got to have the faith to take the leap. A lot of people want to do stuff and they never have the faith in their abilities, or they find excuses to hold themselves back. Finances, family, whatever excuse they come up with, they won't take the leap to pursue their passions. And you got to take that leap. And once you do, you got to stay committed. To me, the difference between a successful person and a person that's not successful, successful person just never quit. I firmly believe that, because there's been many times throughout the 17 years that I've looked at this company and told myself I could make more doing less, and this company is just too challenging in the industry that I've chosen, and I'm over it. And then I get over my pity party and realize what I've created, realize the people that rely on me, not only my my staff, but the thousands of customers we have out there that not only love us and support us, but rely on us to be here for them to service their needs and whatnot. And I know that if I'm not here, don't get me wrong, there's some great businesses out there, but overwhelmingly, there's a lot of businesses that will take their money and just not deliver what they expect, especially if they've been here. So take the leap, stay committed, be determined, and just don't give up on yourself. I started this place with absolutely nothing, and we opened in '06. The economy crashed 4 months later, and we survived that. We've survived 17 years, one of the longest standing late model performance shops in the industry. And, we're still on top of our game, and it's just determination. Stay focused. And if you truly want to be different, then make your customer first and your profit second. That was the big thing that I've learned. I've put myself in numerous situations where it cost me a lot of money. But I knew in the back half that I would somehow make it up. And I see people get trashed on the internet. I see businesses fail arguing over something stupid, even if it's like a $5,000 set of cylinder heads, whatever. It's like, man, why didn't you just take care of that customer? Now instead of having an advocate, you've got an enemy, and one enemy is worth way more than 100 advocates. So take care of your people, and the profit will come from that, even if you have to eat a little up front.
Yeah. A lot of people see your business now. Well, actually, first, thank you for sharing that. A lot of people see your business now, and they're probably looking to start, and they want to start where where you are now, forgetting that it took you 17 years to get there? Like, where did it start? Like, was Vengeance Racing even called Vengeance Racing when it started? Like, where did it start? Who was the first client?
So Vengeance started. It was Vengeance Racing day one. I didn't actually own the company when we opened it. Uh, another technician at GMMG left with me, and I didn't have a pot to piss in. I was young 20s, made $1,000 a week and spent 1,100 a week. So I wasn't starting a business, but it was my passion. And I told him, I said, dude, we have a following. There's people that want us to work on their cars, and we can't because of where we were at. And there's people out there that need us. All we got to do is open the doors, treat people legitimately, give them what they pay for, and we'll be successful. So we opened it. It was me, a gentleman named Mike, and another gentleman named Buddy. It was the three of us. We started off with the building that I own now. We had the very back corner of a single suite, literally enough room to put up a lift and have a toolbox. And first customer, we had two customers. Gentleman named John Story brought us a 67 Chevelle to put an LS motor in. And another gentleman brought us a GMC Cyclone. He wanted a full restoration on it. And we jokingly said, we declined the work. We said, man, the only way we'll do that is if you put an LS in it. And the guy said, okay. We're like, oh, this is going to break the internet. Putting a LS2 V8 in a GMC Cyclone. So those were our first two customers. Both of them turned out great. We weren't big. We were three dudes with a vision and not a pot to piss in, and facing the worst economy we had seen in years. I cleaned toilets, I mopped floors, and I was quote unquote the general manager of the three of us. And it was my job to promote and grow the company. Mike did the tuning and Buddy did the wrenching. I've never touched a wrench in my own company when it comes to delivering cars. I'll get involved and do diagnostics and things like that, but my job has always been to build the business in a manner that keeps the business successful and has the right people in play. My talent lies in designing packages and being connected with cars. I'm very talented about getting in a car and feeling what's right, what's wrong, and knowing how to make it perform, but not physically being the one to make it perform. I just do it on paper. Mm-hmm. But no, man, to this day, I still scrub toilets and mop floors. No matter how big you get or how successful you get, you can never outgrow whoever the bottom guy on that totem pole is, because it takes a team, it truly does. And all of those guys have to feel like they're valued because they should be. But yeah, we were extremely small. We literally were forced into taking over the building. When the economy crashed, the tenants that were leasing the other two suites moved out, and the guy that owned the building was the suite that we were sharing. And he's like, hey guys, I'm putting the building up for sale, so figure it out. So we went to an investor who bought the building for us. Being 4 months in business, you don't have business credit. You don't have
that was 4 months into the business.
Yeah. Okay. When I say we opened and survived the worst economy, that's very true. Right. But we were fortunate to have a friend of ours that was in a position to purchase the building for us, gave us a great price on leasing it. And I guess the values that we put out there and the business structure that I created, even though the economy collapsed, we attracted customers that had expendable income that the economy didn't affect as bad. And that's what kept us alive. It allowed for us to keep moving forward. It allowed for those people to show up and not have an extensive waiting list, because the less fortunate, if you will, or the people that didn't want to spend their money with what was going on, they pulled back. So it left the doors open to do some pretty cool builds. And, we were able to market off of that and probably grow a little bit quicker than we would have if we had to work through all the normal stuff for so many years.
Right. So that's about 2010-ish, 2008, 2010-ish. Can you take us through the next 13 years of what were some of the big milestones, big business changing moments?
So actually, we opened late 06, and in 2010 was when I actually bought the business. Mike had gone through a pretty horrendous divorce and kind of turned things over to me. And when I started looking at how things were being run behind the scenes, I had to make a decision to either acquire the business or to go open my own. But I couldn't continue to do what was being done here. So, I let Mike finalize his divorce and all that. And then I went to him and said, hey, you either need to sell me this business or I'm going to go start my own. But I really wanted to stay and clean up what we had, because I was the guy that sat down and sold products, sold builds, created the name, and the reputation that we have been known for the past 4 years. And I wanted to make any wrongs a right. So Mike turned the company over to me, and had to get a small investment to turn things around, early on, and did so, and kind of dug us out of a hole that I wasn't aware that had been created. And my next goal after that was to purchase the building and take ownership of that, which we did. And then my biggest goal was to claim the number one spot in late model GM performance, which I felt like we achieved probably 6-7 years ago, if I'm being honest. We have continually traveled the country to events between here in California up to Pennsylvania, and we show up with a large, very, very loyal client base. We win races all over the country. We get builds all over the country. We have cars shipped in from Hawaii. We've shipped cars out to Dubai, Norway, Australia, and we have an impeccable reputation at this point. So I would say that buying the building was a huge obstacle and achievement. And then, at least in my head and my team's head and a lot of other people's, we are one of the most recognized, most reputable performance shops in the country. So now my focus is on expansion, into the Ford and Hemi markets. We're going to stay domestic V8 focused, but we're doing that. I've opened up a second company called Vengeance Extreme with my business partner, Robbie Ward. And we're focusing on high-end audio, high-end laser jammers and electronics, and then lift kits and accessories, kind of using the same reputation that Vengeance has, but instead of subbing that work out to people, we're now able to keep that in-house and control the experience, control the expectation and the end product. And I'm focusing on branding the name Vengeance as much as I am the actual racing community itself. I'm looking to create more companies that carry the same mentality and the same level of service and product delivery that they've come and known to expect from Vengeance Racing.
Nice. And I'm assuming the answer to this question is going to be somewhere along the lines of ethics and just being a good person. But a lot of people, the roadblock for a lot of people is financing and investors and banking and different things like that. And it seems like, just in not in the short time of the business, but in the beginning of the business, the short time there, you guys had to really, work on the financing aspects and pretty quickly. What advice do you have people to people listening when it comes to just financing?
So the easiest thing for me is to say to not mismanage your funds that you do have. If you sell somebody something, deliver it. Be a person of your word, have ethics and morals. And then if you find yourself in a situation where you need an investor or a partner, you don't realize it, but you've already surrounded yourself with people that have those means and respect you as a person. And they're a lot more apt to support you because of who you are, not what you're doing.
All
You
right.
know,
They're actually invested already in keeping you open.
they're investing in you, you know, and the people that along the way that have helped me knew that they would get their money back and knew that they were investing in me, and they weren't concerned about anything else because they knew I wouldn't let them down. Uh, People that look to banks or financial institutions for loans, that's a lot more harder path to travel typically, especially in a performance industry where we're all, you know, in this current age, we're not frowned upon, but you know, racetracks are closing, EPA is growing, you know, things like that. So, you know, you go into a bank and tell them you bolt superchargers on Corvettes, they just don't take you as seriously, and your financials. People usually don't have their financials in a manner that they can walk in a bank and get a loan.
Mhm.
So focus on your financials in case that's the direction you have to go, but also be the right person that would allow somebody to walk up to you and support you and know that they're there.
Yeah. I'll bring this up because you brought it up. You talked about therapy as a kid, and I know this is an industry. Like I'm a huge proponent of therapy and coaching, obviously wherever it is.
Yeah.
But you know, you talked about therapy, and we're in an industry where you know it's probably looked down upon or frowned upon. Just not necessarily from your experience, but what do you have? What would you say to someone in business that's probably being held back by some therapeutic stuff about you know just going ahead and seeing a therapist?
Man, you know, the biggest mistake you can make is think that you're too much of a man to go air your dirty laundry or ask for help. Uh, I can tell you that there's not a person in this world that wouldn't benefit from therapy, because there are things about themselves that they'll never realize until they talk to somebody that is able to help them see the perspective. You know, as an example about myself, you know, I still go to therapy. I've got a great therapist, and I'm down to once a month, but I still go just to be able to vent, be able to get his advice and feedback. But when I initially went to him and we started talking, you know, he sat down and asked me about my childhood. And I'm like, yeah, it made me who I am. Didn't affect me at all. You know, I'm glad that I grew up poor. I'm glad that my father beat me. I'm glad that I was homeless, because it made me fight to not be those things. And it made me want to lift people up and help people. And man, if he didn't turn it around and explain to me survival mode, fight or flight mode, you know, things that when he broke it down helped me understand why I do things and the way I do things and the way I think. And it wasn't bullshit. It was, you know, he explained it, and he's like, dude, this, you do this because of this, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's because of this. And I'm like, you know, the next thing I know, the next 3 sessions, I'm in tears because I didn't realize that the childhood that I had affected me the way it did. I thought it was all positive, but there were so many broken pieces inside that are affecting your adulthood, and you just don't know. You know, so many people bottle that stuff up and they don't want to talk about it. You know, man, I had a guy this morning. He was on social media. He owns another very respected shop in the country, and he was posting up about, you know, the ice bath deal. So I hit him up and I'm like, hey man, you know, how are you benefiting from that? What's it doing for you? And you know, he went all physical. You know, oh, I had toe injuries and I'm in my 40s and I work out and all the benefits of that. And I'm like, cool. Well, I've got anxiety through the roof, which ultimately affects my moods and puts me in depressive states. I heard it's good for anxiety. And then boom, he flipped. Man, for the past 2 years, pure depression, battling, you know, fighting back. And for the past couple of months, using this thing, it's all gone. Like I'm back to my old self.
Mhm.
But he never would have said that if I didn't open the door,
Right.
you know? And he even mentioned to me, he's like, man, thanks for being transparent. If you ever want to talk on that level, you know, I'm here for you. And men need to be here for each other on that level. And they do, you know. But yeah, I would tell any man, put your ego aside, because I've learned too. I've learned the real definition of what an ego is, and it's not what it's set out there to be, you know, in society. And once you learn what ego is, and you can learn to set that aside, you really start to study who you are and how your decisions affect your life. And that's when you start to learn a better life or live a better life.
Yeah. Yeah. I always found that it was in coaching and therapy with me, a lot of the things that either coach or therapist reflected back to me was things that everyone else knew about me already anyway. Like I was the only person walking around and didn't know that about myself. And it's like, ouch, that hurt
Yep. Yeah. Yeah,
a
man.
little bit.
Yeah, the way they're not flipping it, they're just giving you a perspective to see it,
Yeah.
you know, and it's, once you're able to see it, you can address it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being transparent about it. We wrap the show up with 13 questions. They're 1 minute each, and it's called Put Up Your Dukes. You ready to put up your dukes?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. First question is, what is this question could be about the industry or your business, or for you, you can define what the industry is, right? Because it's probably not as defined as like just drag racing or just road course racing. So, question number one is, what's the strength?
I think the strength is the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the fun, the great people that you get to meet and surround yourself with. You know, Wes Buck is an example of somebody that I do watch religiously because of his true passion for this industry, what he does, what he's done, and what he continues to do to keep this community growing, because there are so many great people in it. And the fun that we have and the camaraderie that we have is just unbeatable. You know, so many people are truly envious of what I get to come to work every day and do. You know, I complain that I've got to go out and final drive a $150,000 Corvette that we just put twin turbos on, and that's my job. You know, so yeah, camaraderie, good people, and the fun factor.
How about the weakness?
The weakness, I would say, goes back to morals and ethics and support. I feel like a lot of people get involved in this industry because they grew up turning some wrenches on a car. They never became successful at anything else in life. So they become, mechanic, business owner, what have you. And they don't know how to back a product. They don't know how to run a business. They don't have the morals and ethics to take care of their clients in the manner that they should. And it leaves a very poor taste in a lot of people's mouths when they go through that experience, and then they're gun shy about working with another shop. And a lot of people get out of the industry for those very reasons. You know, they're passionate, they're a hobbyist, they have the means, but they're not going to deal with not meeting deliveries and the vehicles not performing and the parts not being installed. And there's a lot of that out there, man. It needs to be weeded out.
Yeah. Biggest opportunity.
Same with anything else, man. The biggest opportunity is whatever you want to make of it. It's your goal is your opportunity in this industry. You want to build the fastest car and you have the knowledge, there's opportunity to do it. You want to build the biggest, baddest LS, LT performance shop in the world, you can do it. You just have to be committed and do it. I think the opportunities are absolutely endless. I have opportunities thrown to me every day, and I turn half of them down because I physically can't complete them. And I would rather turn somebody down than let them down.
Right. Biggest threat?
Government. Government is absolutely our biggest threat. EPA, especially in my opinion, when there are Democrats in office versus conservatives, the push is a lot more aggressive. There's a lot of agenda-based things that are happening that aren't factual. Just even if you look at EV, when you truly look at EV and you look at what it takes to mine for the batteries, what it takes to put out a fire from an EV car, what it takes in a landfill to store those batteries or dispose of them. The EV thing is a hoax. Are there benefits? Sure. Is it safer or better than internal combustion engines? not in my opinion at all. And I feel like it's 100% agenda driven, and it's not factual basis of what we should be looking at and how to improve pollution and things like that, if it's that big of a concern. And the sad reality of it is the performance industry itself is like 100th of a thousandth of the percent of pollution in this world. And it's getting hit the hardest because it's so popular.
Most overrated part of your business, your life, the industry?
Man, most overrated would be, I guess in my head, the first thing that pops up is the internet. Uh, the way people put so much value on the internet when you don't realize the person on the other end of the keyboard that's putting out that information could be an idiot or
Or a
could have an
robot?
agenda. There is so much misinformation and so much untruths and lies and people that lack experience, but they'll post their opinion anyway, and then people will read that and think it's the gospel, and people walk in my shop all the time and the first words out of their mouth are, "Hey, I read on the internet." Hey, stop right there. You came to me for 25 years of experience in LS and LT platforms. I don't care what you read, and I'll tell them who's factual and who's not, and what their source, if it was reliable or not, because of course there's good information as well. But the internet overall creates a lot of false expectations and leads people down a lot of bad paths.
Yeah, I know this is about you, but that's one of the reasons why I started this show, is just to overcome some of the narratives on the internet. Because I've had people come, yeah, I'll start a vengeance racing and by next year, and it's like, ooh, you probably need to hear how it really happens rather than just listening
Yeah.
to videos. How about most underrated?
That's tough, man. I guess I try to surround myself with great manufacturers and great people, and great venues and experiences. And I don't. Nothing underrated comes to mind, if I'm being honest. If anything is underrated, it would be the lack of respect and ability to run a quality business. And people know the difference between that and somebody that can just build a fast car. There's a lot of people out there that could build a car that goes out and runs a number, but they don't consider the fact that the guy went through 6 engines to do it. And now suddenly he's some internet celebrity because he did this. And it's like, well, you got to build a reliably fast car, and you've got to support your customer, and it should look good. I'm not a big fan of milk crate racing, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Biggest mental hurdle?
The biggest mental challenge is dealing with unrealistic expectations. I think, it's funny to me. People come to us all the time based on our reputation, and I make it very clear to them up front. I say, hey, we're not perfect human beings. We're not always delivering the perfect product. We deliver what we say we will, but unforeseen circumstances happen. You're modifying a vehicle and you're beating on it when you're done. Things don't always go as planned, even if you do everything correctly. That being said, we'll stand behind you and we'll make it right when those things arise. And then, you'll have a customer that goes out and bangs the rev limiter and breaks the valve spring, and then he's back. Well, I just didn't expect this to happen. I came to you guys because you're the best. And then you have to reiterate all those facts and then work through the situation. But it's those unrealistic expectations, or, the guy that wants 1,000 horsepower and thinks it drives like it did when he dropped it off, and is unwilling to compromise on the things that change when you do that, when you create that type of monster. So expectations.
Yeah. What's the last thing that you have to say for the younger people younger than you or younger than you in the industry coming up?
Man, the younger people, and I love our youth. I still like to think I'm young. But, I've been to high schools and talked to their tech departments and things of that nature. Work ethic work ethic and commitment and being willing to do what it is to get your foot in the door somewhere. So many young people today want to start at the top. They go to tech school in high school and they get out and they show up at my doorstep with a resume that says they built an engine their senior year and they want to make 95 grand to start with 2 weeks paid vacay and full benefits. And I'm like, dude, I might give you a job mopping and cleaning the bathrooms and then groom you over the next 2 to 3 years. But you gotta be willing to get your feet wet and do what's needed to get your foot in the door. So if people would just talk to their parents, talk to their grandparents, and get an idea of what actual work ethic is, and be willing to take an entry-level position and earn and prove your spot within a company, you'll go so much further and have so many more opportunities and doors open for you than you ever will by taking the approach that so many people do these days.
Yeah. How about for the last word for the older people, the people who came before you?
There's a lot of greats before me, and I don't even consider myself to be among them. I'm thankful for the greats. I'm thankful for the pathways that they have paved, the aftermarket community that we have, the accomplishments that have been done for us, and where it's led this industry today. There's absolutely some great folks out there that have paved the way for us to do what we do, and I'm talking, having worked at GMMG, you go back to the Fred Gibb days in the 60s, Dick Harrell, those guys that were, hell, even locally, Gary Grimes, his father, Hoyt Grimes, was a pioneer in nitro funny cars, with those guys that were sitting on the transmission with the engine in front of them and on those bias ply slicks, nothing but respect for those guys. There's plenty of people too that have tainted this industry, and I don't have anything to say for those guys because I prefer to focus on the good as much as possible. But I'm definitely thankful for this industry. I'm thankful that I got into it, and I'm thankful that I'm able to live a life that I can do something I'm passionate with, because so many people in this world don't have that opportunity.
Yeah. Last question is to your peers.
To my peers, I've got a lot of great ones, a lot of great people. I work with a lot of shops throughout the country, and as an up and comer, I had my vision set where it was going to be, and I initially had the whole holier than thou mentality, and I only focused on me. And a few years into that, I realized it's not what you know, it's who you know, and you better change your mindset. And I work with some of the greatest people collectively in this industry that we have to offer, and 90% of them are competitors, and we support each other. I can call dozens of shops throughout this country and talk to these guys and sometimes ladies about what they're doing or a situation that I'm in, and get advice from them. And I feel like that's the way it should be. I feel like we should support one another and grow the industry. You can be competitive on the track, but you can also be professional in business. And, on that token, there's quite a few that don't take that approach and want to be secretive and holier than thou. And, to them, you'll learn your own lesson. To the others, I'm thankful to have them in my life.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful that I had a chance to spend this time with you today. It was definitely enriching to me. Learned a lot, got inspired to do a lot. I'm glad that actually we share the same story of mechanically not being
Yeah, man.
being that great. That was a great story for me to hear. But thank you so much for everything that you share. Best of luck with all of your businesses, Vengeance Racing, Vengeance Extreme, and then also the events. And I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing everything that you got.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk and be with you and share the stories.
Thank you. I appreciate that a ton. And we appreciate you guys being here with us on Drag Illustrated's The Racing Business. And we'll see you next week. Again, remember that it's brought to you by Racers Club. If you haven't gone out and got your Racers Club swag, you need to go do that right now. The big restock and re-release was this past Monday. And then also just big thanks to our executive producer, JT Murder Tundra Hudson. Love you guys. You love JT. Love you guys. Keep viewing, share, and get something out of these conversations. Take care.